that most of this music is contained within. It's multi-purpose, goes with everything. What we do here is like hot sauce, goes with virtually everything. And the story of the comic book is almost secondary to the medium of it. I think we reinvented the way comics are to be written. I contacted the folks who are doing Keanu Reeves' comic. What is the name of that? We'll find that out and punctuate it. Go ahead and look that up. But they've done an amazing job. He's got a great character, and it's graphic. It's paper. It's graphic novel. And when I say comics, I say it with eminent reverence, okay? I grew up with underground comics. Sorry?
Berserker.
And I called the folks from Berserker, and I described that I was interested in now resuming a presence in the graphic novel world. I think I might have something to offer. Join the conversation, because we created a new way to see comics once all the trees are gone and there is no more paper. You may have noticed that paper costs more and more, and ink and varnish and the trip to the comic store, all in accelerated. Same thing has happened to my record collection. You're breathing it. It's cyber, it's dig. I'm in the Spotify streaming business, all right? And same thing's going to happen with graphic novels. So we approached from the future, always, and then back into reality. The Roth project, we believe, Colin Smith, Tom, and I were the pivot here of what this is. This is the first graphic novel that works 100% digitally. When you scroll, you can continually have a surprise on each new snap up, as opposed to a printed page comic where you flip the page. You now have 2 pages, and what's going to happen? You have to flip the page again. Oh, their lives are saved. And now you have to read that 2 pages. And what's going to happen? You have to flip the page, and oh, that happens. The dragon lands. Every time you scroll up, you have a fresh surprise, something new and unexpected. My premise was that I can take that horsehair brush, pen and ink, the classic, super classic Victorian era approaches to the graphic arts, and working with the fellas, translate it through the most hyper technicolor, modern, retina busting, brain bursting, everything. In that respect, for example, we have what's called a binocular zoom. Usually the backgrounds in a comic strip, the closest you can get to them is putting your nose against the paper. And that Jeep on the other side of the river doesn't get any bigger. It gets a little bigger because now you're closer to the paper. Digitally here, it's fully interactive. This took 6 years for us to build and for me to pay for it. That's why my arm and part of my leg is missing, but not this toe. That's from rock and roll. Oh, yeah. And you think of this house at the Mojo Dojo, this is an art space. And I live in it. Don't think of it as a house. Think of it as a production studio, an art studio, a theater setup, a collecting point for all kinds of talents. So everywhere you look here is artwork and the materials to create that, both digitally and really, really old school. I'm not kidding when I say the brushes that I use haven't changed since probably the 1500s. Binocular access means you can stop the scroll, which can go manual or automatic. You can turn off the narration or listen to it with the narration. And when you stop it, you can zoom in, for example, on the truck that is parked on the other side of the airstrip. And like looking through binoculars, it will enlarge and you'll discover detail in that truck. I spent a whole night drawing that one truck. To your regular eye in the frame, it's just a little dot in the distance, the same way it would look if you're walking along and it's 2 miles away. But when you look through the binoculars, now you see there's a person in it. You can see the detailing of the fenders and the spokes and so forth. And the backgrounds here have been worked on every bit as much as the foregrounds. That's very unusual in the world of graphic novels, and particularly fast-moving comic industry. Marvel Comics, when you first start off, you're doing inking and pencils of backgrounds. Hey, kid, come here. Give me a window, a stove, and a coffee pot on it. The front guy draws the superhero and whatever. You can get things done a lot quicker that way. I approached it the way you might in the 1920s, which is the way my mother taught me and my sisters. We were raised the way she was, the way you would do in the 1930s. For me, it was all reading, writing, arithmetic, and everything that you do indoors, musical instrument, theater, poetry, debate, family performance. One of us plays the piano, the other can sing, play chess, and then the great outdoors and everything that happens out there. So consequently, in those days particularly, one artist would do it all. If you look, I'll think of the names later, Winsor McCay, Lil Nemo. Today, he did it all. He drew pencil, did the inking, put the colors, and then wrote the script. And it's funny because the script always is a little short of the bubble it's in, and it barely fits. He didn't figure out, well, first you write it and then draw the bubble. That one only took me 4 years.
Roth Show.
In the future, all of history will be contained in what's called the time files. It'll be a museum that is digitally generated the same way those immersion goggles, Tom, that you got me, where Alex Honnold is solo climbing and you feel like you're right up in the mountains with him. That's an immersive experience. That is how all of time, because all of the books will have been either burned or lost, they're paper. They fall apart. And in 100, 200 years, about 100 years, I think, is where we set this. You will have a mainframe computer, or several, a la the Matrix perhaps, that generate all of history from the beginning of time as man might know it, right down to the blade of grass, right to the stars in the constellation. And that is how all of history will be maintained, and that's what will be referenced in order to make decisions both legally and politically in the future. That will be the reference library for what really happened in the past. They are artificially generated computer programs. Everybody in them throughout history, you have Abe Lincoln, for example, he is not aware that he is a computer-generated image, all right? They are conducting themselves in an improvisational way, however, and history can go very wrong because the Russians have a computer too. And they have, the name of the computer, Russian computer, is Vector, Vektor. And it has launched its own viral programs to fuck with history. So that consequently, as political and legal decisions are made internationally, who owns the rights to this river? Well, if you fuck that up in the past, it stands as a legal precedent in the courts of the world, so to speak. The United States has a team of time cops. 07, who looks a lot like me, and we go into the reasons why that is a time cop. He is a computer-generated, AI, artificially intelligent, self-aware time cop. He is sent to the different time periods in order to do battle with the various characters that Vector is generating in the different phases of history. 07 will receive a call in the muster room or the locker room where all of the time cops collect in between missions, and he will have to journey back or forward back in history, various time frames, as a character in that time period in order to find the most common projection of the Vector computer, which is the Major, a little scrotum of a character with a giant goofball bodyguard named Bob. And they keep showing up throughout history, trying to change who owns that river and who actually built that pyramid and the oil rights to this country, what really took place. They have to be tracked down over and over again. They have a whole coterie of bad guys. All of these characters are artificially intelligent. They are very self-aware, the bad guys, and 07. 07 has cohorts throughout history. What 07's colleagues and teammates in the time files, the individuals who patrol the time frames, chasing down these bad guys, is that he is actually an executioner for the Dark Ocean Society. Dark Ocean Society is a Japanese Yakuza concern that has its roots way back in the 1500s. The story of who they are is what is depicted in this upcoming teleplay. We created a teleplay here. Occasionally, the red phone in the locker room rings, and that is the Dark Ocean Society. That's the name of the crew that he works as an executioner for. And in this case, it's bad guys hunting down and killing worse guys. They are all very aware that they are artificially intelligent, generated computer imagery. The name of the Dark Ocean Society is discussed in the upcoming teleplay. We did all the background music. I sang and played it. Tom ran it through the Digiverse, Pro Tools, his shoe phone. I saw him using a Dick Tracy wristwatch. I owned one. Can't fool me. So the teleplay is to arrive at the end of the comic strip. Get to the end of the Roth project. Make your way all the way through the Roth project. Enjoy. And now my idea is this is where an actual paper, well, there's still paper, graphic novel would pick up. I might even be interested in having an artist do this. This is when we approached and talked to the fellas from Berserker. It didn't come to anything really, I didn't pursue it, frankly. Just, stick my toe in the water. Usually I test the deep end with both big toes, but one of these is broken right now. And probably as a direct result of that specific mindset historically. So I dibble dabble. But now I'm thinking again. The teleplay begins in the locker room where all the digital time cops are collecting. They are capable as AI-generated computer programs, they are like viruses themselves, of adopting individual identities. You'll hear one that sounds like Sherlock Holmes. You'll hear another one that sounds like Dracula. There's another that sounds like Goldfinger. There's another that sounds like, and they're jocking around with each other. They're fucking around in the locker room in between missions. They're giving each other shit, just like we all do in the locker room, all right? That's what the opening voices are. And then the narration begins. The red phone rings. 07 is being summoned back to 1951, where the Dark Ocean Society is operating out of right now. And they have a big problem. Vector has launched a series of viruses throughout time, and 07 is going to visit those offices of the Dark Ocean Society in 1951. He's going to be given a mission, and somebody stole the family sword. He has to get that back too. They're very self-aware. They know everything. They've seen every movie. They've read every book. They've ventured through every podcast. They've seen every film clip, every paperback, and they routinely quote these and make fun of themselves. So yes, somebody stole the fucking family sword, and he has to get that back as well. Roth Show. Prepare yourselves. If you enjoyed Hannibal Lecter, you may enjoy the ending of this. This is classic Japanese, brutish graphic novel stuff. This is not for the squeamish. If you feel squeamish, come back again when you're a little younger. We go now to the locker room where time cops are collecting. They're jocking around. 07's going to get a call on the red phone, and he heads back to 1951. We then begin to hear the story of where this gang came from. They're all computer-generated images who are starting to move up through time. I did the music in the background, the singing, the drums, etc., engineered by Tom Sorowski. And as always, our graphics are the preeminent. I'm sorry, I'm high. What's his name again?
Colin Smith.
Sounds like a drink. That's a Tom Collins.
Yes.
Well, that's the whole staff right there. I like the way you think. As far as I know, fully interactive digital, As far as I know, I had to give up a big toe to get this shit. I understand why careers are ruined. You gotta excuse me. I got a new big toe. Dr. Rosenthal saved my landing gear right again, and I'm a little buzzed here on hillbilly heroin. I think that's what the generic term for this is at the pharmacy. Nevertheless, I do feel talkative. Do I sound talkative? I feel talkative. Tom's about to wedge, and yeah, you do seem. Roth Show. I am not aware of any other graphic novel depiction or presentation that works the way this one does. It was designed not to depict my ability as an artist or even as a storyteller, though I think we may have topped out pretty well in those departments. This is designed to reinvent the way graphic novels are presented in the future. This is how they all will be presented in the future. It's going to go like my record collection has. There aren't going to be any more trees, or those trees are all going to be used for something else that are more important, like chopsticks to feed kids. I mean it. And a printed page with varnish for a superhero? No, that's going to be on your laptop like my record collection is. It's going to be in your earbuds it's going to be in your fucking wristwatch. My whole record collection and the entire record collection of anybody who ever played guitar rock is in your wristwatch as we speak. And so will be graphic novels. That being the case, they will scroll a completely brand new 20,000-year-old Chinese idea. What do you think, Tom?
It's good.
Yeah, it scrolls. And that way it's infinitely interesting. Each time you scroll, that's an actual rate of measurement here at the Mojo Dojo. And reveal. You can have punchlines over and over again. We provided background music, as all graphic novels will have in the future. Why wouldn't you? It's contained in the same screen that all of the music collection of the earth is, creating something for even paperbacks. We started creating some blues type music to go along with Bruce Springsteen's spoken word autobiography. It was great. It went together. And you know what else? That same music went beautifully with somebody with a British accent reading, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." It went from Freehold, New Jersey to that point in British history perfectly. And why wouldn't it? The medium is already there and responsive to it. So we not only created backing tracks and soundtrack music, and why don't we give our team a name? We'll call it the Bomb Squad, because this shit's the bomb. All right? The Bomb Squad can create this for any of your paperback novels. Have somebody, a great actor, read the narration, not me. I tried to be a great actor. You'll hear that throughout, but I'm not an actor. But that's my charm, that I know that. And then you can have any numbers. A lot of unemployed geniuses here in Showbiz Town, and there's a few other Showbiz Towns just in the United States alone, to create backing track or soundtrack music the way you might for a TV show, a series, or a movie for a graphic novel is an easy no-brainer if you are scrolling. Here we've created it to where you can just kick back and watch it the way you might a scrolling slideshow, or you can stop it and do it manually. I narrated and read because this was designed also to be a novel, Game of Thrones, and it's sprawling so that you have endless plot threads. So that's what you're hearing at the end of the graphic novel. Here we begin again. Let's go right back to the beginning. Like a great James Bond movie, we open up in a chase scene. There's complete mystery. Who are these people? Where are they? Why are they chasing? What is happening? And then we go back to, okay, here's the history, so forth. What would essentially in a movie be 2 to 4 minutes of chase scene and result took us 6 years to create. Wow, a little over $500,000, crisp. That didn't include catering by Postmates. It was endless. But it was when we do these kinds of projects here at the Mojo Dojo, which is my house in Pasadena. They're the kinds of vacations where you pray for rain so that you don't have to go home for another 4 days because the airplane couldn't land. I'm sorry. The airplane can't land. Don't yell at me. I'm not the pilot. I'm not the plane. I'm not the weather. Anyway, wish me luck, but in Spanish, and I'll see you guys 4 days late. That's what happened here. We endless combinations and collaborations of some very inspired, very, very, very high-paid talent here, worth every penny, something I always dreamt of. So enjoy our graphic novel, fully interactive digispace. It's full of apps. You can sit and read the book form by Kindle, and we have particular music for that, just for reading. In theory being, this is how all paperbacks would be. Why wouldn't you create soundtrack music for any given paperback that comes if it arrives digitally, electrically. The medium's already there. You already have the headsets on. Strap in and watch out. This is adult level. This is ancient lore revisited in a way that may not be digestible for the easily squeamish. That shit is intentional. The Bomb Squad, myself and Tom Sorowski sitting over here. The Bomb Squad's pretty good. That's a great name. That's a good t-shirt, right, Tom?
Absolutely.
Okay. Podcast Tom is actually Tom Sorowski, who's worked on everything from The Boss to the Super Bowl. And I have actually bought everything The Boss has made, and I have watched the Super Bowl. So this was fucking meant to be, Tom. This shit is the bomb. The Bomb Squad is also responsible for the 4 Van Halen songs that are currently on Instagram, face page, you and me too. We're everywhere. We're fucking digital, dude. I'm not. I don't even own a smartphone. I own the smartest phone Cricket makes. I don't own anything that fucks the line up in my pants. It's vanity, Tom. Driving the spaceship's up to you. Why we even bother? That's up to me. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, hire the Bomb Squad to do your soundtrack music, your soundscaping, I'll call it, for your next, what would we do? A Sopranos episode. Because they'll try again for the third time. It's like Rocky. Those are the most popular characters ever. I think the most popular character in the history of television, according to some key major survey, is Tony Soprano. Yeah?
I've heard that.
The Soprano family. All right. Our background would go with something that is space, right? Outer space. That's beyond the curtain of the trackless nuclear atomic void. Do we even use the word atomic anymore? It's an old version of
nuclear.
Yeah. Nuclear. No, I think it's nuclear.
Nuclear
is, it has something to do with the microwave.
Right.
Nuke it. All right. Well, that's just the bomb. We're the Bomb Squad.
Yep.
You can hire us. Who's the fella that came from, I want to fuck you like an animal?
Trent Reznor.
Trent.
Nine Inch Nails, yeah. Has
won some serious accolades and attention properly generated for doing soundscaping, I'll call it. You're not just playing music. One of the best soundscapings I ever saw was Abel Gance, that's the French way of saying Abel Gance, director, silent film of Napoleon. I believe it was 5 hours long, and it was at the Shrine Auditorium, which driving through, I think that might be the new Gallon Center. It was on a triptych screen, 3 giant movie screens, so that it was cineramic, wrapping almost from 9 to 3 o'clock, facing into the 12. Got it? With a full 105-piece orchestra with a specially designed score to go along with the film, because it was a silent film about the life of Napoleon. I had to go 3 times. It played, I think, 5 days in a row, and I had to go 3 times because I kept falling asleep. I can only watch 3 hours of film at any given time, sitting in the dark. And with Coppola conducting the orchestra on at least one of those nights. So I went and I watched the first 3 hours and fell asleep. And then I came back intentionally to watch the middle 3 hours and then got to the end. My takeaway is that the music could have been generic to any number of things. It's sort of serendipitous, a great way of saying that when you play Metallica, turn off the sound, watch a football game, and it will make sense more frequently than not, as if somebody edited it together. It'll just go together perfectly, okay? This live orchestra playing along with what was happening on the screen may or may not have been actually perfectly timed. We use that principle for our graphic novel here. Whether or not you're just listening to the music, you could even turn off the graphic novel. We put as much time into the music as well. So hire us. We'll do your next Outer Space, Sopranos. What else is our music? Our stuff is hard-boiled. I'm hard-boiled. I'm a product of, Mickey Spillane and that Humphrey Bogart stuff. Black and white movies is my time period. So film noir is, I'm a little bit well salted. But yeah, that's the best stuff. Make your fucking eyes water. Roth show. Banking wasn't base, but it was close. After op nonsense, the usual brain trust. Sometimes I like to fuck with the guys. Okay. Who's buried in Grant's tomb?
Jimmy Hoffa.
How much time do I have?
Nice try. What color's an orange?
Is this 2 out of 3?
What language is Spanish?
Originally,
Okay, that was a good one.
Latin. Right.
Us dummies will surprise you at times.
Hey, how'd I do? I had a dick.
How could you possibly know that?
Howdy doody.
Look it up.
I will not look it up.
Hey, I brought some dumb chick home one night from the land's edge and accidentally discovered a dick.
I think I know who you're talking about. The tall chick with the muscles.
You guys are disgusting fucking cavemen.
What's she trying to say?
You guys are disgusting fucking cavemen.
What did you do?
Bro, I can make taxi fare in 182 languages. I'm AI.
It's the new world out there.
That's right, and you Neanderthals should think about joining
Who did
it.
she just turn into?
She's woman. Hear her roar.
Today I am a fine young American black woman with a future.
Yeah, right.
Careful pencil dick. Black eyes matter. Oh, how'd I do? I just got his shit
I
slapped.
don't know how you guys got to be programs. The mainframe beckons.
What's he mean by that?
He means there's a call coming in. The red phone.
Suddenly everyone's being great at spontaneously being mystified. Mystery. Nothing more than the absence of information.
The red phone.
No mystery here.
The red phone.
Stopped being headlines a long time ago.
The red phone.
Let me guess. Leaving on a jet plane.
The red phone.
Big old jet airliner.
The red phone.
Was my baby gonna write me a letter? Front office was kicking my ass head first into some creepshow corner of the past again. 11th commandment. Thou shalt not lie. If they were sending me where I thought, I was gonna get to practice more than my Japanese cooking class. Sliced peach. Meet the Dark Ocean Society. Started off wrong in the 1500s. Left a trail of souls all the way up until now. And right now, headquarters was Yokohama, 1952. Head first into the past meant command was all red flags from the boys based in Tokyo. Not my third time downtown with these sharks, and like a lot of family reunions, combustible. The combination was potent. How I got there was up to me, but time's up. Get there. I could take the usual mainframe Frankendump A train, or turns out my time machine's just perfect for the occasion. Go low, go slow. 7-Up, baby. Always had it, always gonna. Trouble man, south on the Harbor Freeway. Making the scene with a gangster lean. Hard right, ice beer lotto. Last gas till the rising sun. 1952. Japan is a parking lot. American bombs have seen to that. Well-to-do bankers and businessmen suddenly find themselves camping amongst destroyed ruins along the now homeless city. Water wars, food struggle prevails. Many living now outdoors, an art form few in Tokyo had ever even attempted. After 10 years of economic depression and 10 years of war, Japan now faced 10 years of anarchy and violent confusion. Lawless, unpoliced, a once great country crying out for order. And order has arrived in the hands of the most terrifying and vicious killers history has ever produced. My kind of town. The hamster wheel I was on was usually 13 steps closer to the dark ocean than you'd ever want to be. God's honest truth, though, I see better in the dark. Fanning out through Japan's burned-out cities and the resultant unrest, 7 families controlled with a conscienceless fury. Beneath the shark skin and wristwatches were the same tattoos that caused even royalty to pause back during Da Vinci. It was then, during the 1500s, their legend and the very real story behind it began. A small village somewhere between Edo and Osaka. Villages and cities alike, constructed of wood and paper, burned in an instant. Incinerating all contained within, in a blink of an eye, all is lost. Firefighting, a somewhat unrefined art form, an act of heroics, more of desperate resort for a desperate man in a desperate situation, called for a certain type of soul. And those souls collected under the banner of the Aragoto. They were a small group of gamblers, wanderers, and adventurers who found a home living in the barracks outside the small village, camping, who covered themselves with tattoos they felt imbued them with bravery. Rushing into the latest conflagration, chanting to each other to compel and console equally from hell to heaven, and always returning the chant even louder, but first, from heaven into hell. Commanded by the famous Okijimbo Aragoto and his brother Iketoru, they would throw themselves, as violent as the very hostile flames themselves, into the incinerating and plausibly instant doom to lose so many amongst their ranks, but always maintaining the number 15.
They were never without conscripts and apprentices, eager to fight against the unfightable beneath the Aragoto flag. More a clan than a crew of fearless firemen, their laughing spirits and personalities became equally famous. Every young peasant boy dreamt of becoming Aragoto. Every young girl dreamt of marrying one. Many across Japan began imitating their colorful and laughing arrogant swagger, all part of accomplishing the nearly impossible. Firefighting in ancient times consisted of, other than extinguishing the flames, rather creating a margin between the inferno and all that existed next to it. The Aragoto clan was famous for being able to destroy and clear an entire block of homes, houses, brothels, and shops alike within minutes. It was a destructive talent that was to serve them well in the following centuries. These were men who did not go home to normal lives or families. They retained their rough style and mocking posture. Ronin, wave men, corks in the current, banded together in the name of each other. None of which was lost on a particularly vile landowner. Usugi Suga, a local governor who raised prize champion horses, many of which he was overly fond of beating and treating worse than the peasant servants who cared for them. An act that did not go unnoticed by locals, and a deep, interfering sour chasm began to widen between the governor and the people. Usugi Suga, a hateful and vengeful soul, if there was a soul to be had. Hated by all, he fostered a slow and simmering rage against the honored Aragoto clan. He had watched them very slowly pry open his iron hand and find their way into the hearts of those which he had very much hoped to subjugate. The final blow came one snowy February night. A cook fire accidentally torched the castle. The walls burned instantly and brightly. The emperor's prized horses whinnied frantically and terrified. 25 of his loyal manservants struggled to free the expensive animals. The very foolish governor had ignored their pleas to not lock the animals safely into their stalls with iron chains and padlocks. Even now, the heat increasing and becoming unforgiving. Ukijimbo and his men descended into the inferno with little or no regard for personal safety. After saving all of the retainers in the royal court and realizing that the animals would die a vulgar and agonizing death because of the governor's arrogant miscalculation, animal lovers themselves, they decided to quickly dispatch the creatures mercifully. Firing arrows perfectly, accurately, into their neck and heart, the animals died painlessly in the blink of an eye. 9 of the Aragoto died horribly in the flames, hoping to save both creature and man. Their fearless teammates stood helplessly to the side of the flames, watching their soon-to-be-lost brothers and chanting, "From heaven into hell, and from hell into heaven." The following morning, with the burning husk of the castle as a backdrop, the governor's rage could not be contained. His horses had been assassinated, and no amount of reasoning or logic could contain his fury. He decreed death, and death to all responsible, and all knew who were responsible. The remaining members of the Aragoto clan were rounded up from their barracks and dragged in shackles before the governor and his court. Already convicted by the corrupt official, they were to be buried upside down, crucified and alive, in the foundation of the very horse stalls in which they had attempted to rescue the terrified animals. An unfair and grievous fate. All had been captured except for their leader, Okijimbo. Himself a one-time fisherman, miraculously he had been out in his small skiff upon the dark seas next to the village when the raids had occurred. Upon hearing of the governor's arrogance, Okijimbo, in an act of selflessness, bargained for the release of his brothers and the remaining crew. Clearly aware of what vulgar fate awaited him, he communicated with the governor, who, foolishly full of self, agreed. Both were unaware of the history to follow. The transaction was performed, and Okijimbo presented himself to the royal jail. He was trussed and led like an animal to the royal court. His men were unshackled and released, but refusing to leave, waiting to witness both the spiritual and physical departure of their leader. The governor arrogantly agreed, insolent with power. A colossal iron cooking pot, usually used for making rice and capable of containing 700 liquid gallons, was already boiling in the courtyard. It required 15 men to move the behemoth. It was filled with palm cooking oil and brought to 1,000-degree boil. What follows is fact. In front of 400 court retainers and royal guard alike, Okijimbo Aragoto, much to the governor's surprise and horror, waved off his manacles and disrobed in front of the royal court. His gaze, unwavering, locked laser-like into the governor's pupils, was something the governor had never experienced from a commoner. Okijimbo backed towards the boiling, seething, cooking oil-filled pot, turned, climbed up a 7-rung, hand-hewn, rough wooden ladder, and without a sound or waver of his gaze, stepped over the rim and descended into the boiling, viscous fluid. He raised up once, disappeared to the bottom, and into history forever. It was 22 minutes before a single sound was made. Nobody moved a muscle. Like a silent breeze, a springtime pulse, lifting the tiny corner of a rice paper page in an ancient book. You could feel the change. You couldn't hear it. You couldn't see it. But it was there. And nobody could feel it more than Governor Osugisuga. No one in the country had ever seen an act of selfless loyalty like that in their life. They would not see it again. He had boiled himself alive. It was a whisper that moved across the country. Exactly 1 year later, on the anniversary of Aragoto's demise, Governor Osugisuga awoke to an empty castle. Royal retainers disappeared into the forest, leaving doors unlocked, gates opened. Suga was caught flagrant delicto with 2 of his comfort boys and unceremoniously imprisoned. He was ironically kept in one of the newly rebuilt horse stalls, one that had caused all the calamity. The looming cookpot that had meant so much to his political history, dispatched to the royal blacksmith, broken apart by hammer, and melted down. 2 items were forged. First, a small peasant's lantern, the kind used for hundreds of years by a fisherman out upon the dark ocean. The other, more an act of craftsmanship. Blacksmiths had worked for days fashioning a huge bandsaw, handles on either end, a surgically sharpened and toothed wonder. 2 men heaving back and forth could fell one of the giant local cypress trees in minutes. Osuga was marched by both monks and guards into the courtyard. He was staked out naked and spread-eagled. He was blessed by the monks. The remaining firefighters took turns, first removing a toe, a finger, an arm, then a leg. The final 4 removing his head. The pile of limbs were collected and taken to the fishing boat that had been Okijimbo's humble beginnings. Huge black gorax, ravenous birds used just for such purpose, prepared even now to give the deceased a sky burial. The ravenous, predatory scavengers hurling themselves, blood-spattered, offal-covered, and deep into the gore. As the vulgar, grunting creatures devoured Suga's remains, the boat was towed out of sight of land. The birds, bilious and overfed, unable to fly any distance, were shooed away from the listing ship until they fell helplessly exhausted into the waves. There, they were eaten by the waiting sharks. The governor's head, taken to the royal chef, was boiled and rendered. The fat of his brain scraped off and poured into the peasant's lantern that had been prepared just for this purpose. A small flame was lit, the lantern placed at the foot of Okijimbo's grave. The skull, scraped clean and varnished, given to the children for toilet training. The Aragoto symbol was reconfigured, reflecting 2 diamonds with a base. The lantern. All who steered by its light would navigate these dark waters together. The Dark Ocean Society. Their DNA had been programmed artificially and duplicated in the 2 individuals I would be sitting in front of. 500 years later. Okijimbo Aragoto and his brother Iketeru were now Boss O and Ike. and they learned a little bit since the 1500s.